This is our last one of the job search. I can't believe it. It seems to have gone really fast. But welcome to the job search. So this is our third job search session this week and the last one as well. This may be the first webinar that you've joined us on, or you may have already attended the one that we did last week. If you have missed the one last week, which was on finding your strengths, and you want to take a look at that, then we have uploaded one of those to our YouTube channel. We've got the link to that at the end of today's session. So you're very welcome to go and check that one out. So the job search today. So this is the series of the webinars that we're running. So the webinars are based upon my book, which is called From Learner to Earner. And you can see there an overview of each of the subjects. Hopefully when you've signed up to these, you've seen the overview as to what each session covers. So you've got an idea as to what to expect from each of the ones that you've signed up for. You can go in and amend your preferences around what you've signed up to. So if you hadn't signed up to everything and you want to sign up to a few more, then great, you can go in and do all of that. Now with each of these, we are aiming to cover a fair bit of information within a pretty short space of time. And the idea is that you can go back and go over certain slides in your own time or do some of the activities. We appreciate that we've got people with a huge range of knowledge and experience that are joining these webinars. So we know that we've had first years, but we've also had mature students or finalists or graduates. And it's hard for us to pitch the content to hit where everybody is right now. So definitely delve back into some of the subjects in a bit more detail to suit where you are at. The webinars are fairly short, so they last between 30 and 45 minutes, and we will try and give you an indication as to how long each topic will last. You can ask questions at any point, and my colleague Helen will answer these as they come in. She'll explain how they are going to work in a moment. As I said before, we're covering each topic 3 times in a week. Ideally, you will tune in live to take the chance to ask any questions, and we had loads of questions the last few, but we will be recording these and you'll receive a link to the session that you've signed up for. These are set times each week, so you can choose the day and the time that suits you, but on bank holiday weeks like this one of the days will change, so you can see the topics there. We do have activities linked to each webinar, and it'll be advised as to whether you should complete these before or after attending the session. These are all optional, but you will get the most from the webinar series if you complete them, as they're practical tasks that will help you in your aim of securing a job. It's also worth pointing out that, you know, part of the reason why we've moved these online rather than doing a book tour, which was my original plan, is that with everything going on, everything is online right now, and where possible we are trying to update you with the information that we have that's most current. So we will try and keep you updated at relevant points as to what is going on out there in the market. So to get the most out of the webinars, here are a few tips. So be present and participate. So Helen is going to explain how the questions and comments works. Do you want to let us know, Helen?
Yeah, so I'll be responding to your questions throughout the webinar. If you could if you could use Zoom chat, which is generally at the bottom of your screen, please ignore the Q&A function. And if you go into Zoom chat, open up the box, and if you could set it to all panelists and attendees, it will default to all panelists, but if you can change that so that everyone can see your comments and questions, that would be great. For some of the webinars, I've had lots and lots of questions. I've struggled to keep up, and if that does happen in this case, we'll do a Q&A summary at the end of the webinar. Okay?
That's great, thanks Helen. So don't be shy, ask your questions. And if you can mute your phone so that you're not distracted by any notifications, that would be great. Make use of the tools and resources. So in this webinar and all of the other ones, we do list some resources at the end. These are for further reading or further information. Also, we have created a series of templates and checklists and things which will support each of the webinars, and we will send those to you afterwards as well. So make good use of those. One resource that we will refer to time and time again is your career service. So they are a fantastic resource, and they're all working really hard to adapt what they do to the online environment. So if you haven't already, definitely check out what they are up to, because they want to provide lots of support and they will be able to update you with what they're doing right now. So, brief introductions if you haven't come across us before. So I'm Sophie, MD at SRS. So we work with employers and with universities as well in the graduate recruitment and employability space, and I also wrote the book that this webinar series is based upon. I'm always happy to connect with people, and you can see my connection details below. Helen?
Yeah, so I work with Sophie to help universities and students with employability, and we run a lot of the assessment centres together. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn as much as you can about the different stages of the recruitment process, so please take every opportunity to ask any questions and get involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And at various points in the webinar series, we will be joined by experts in graduate recruitment to hear their valuable insight and top tips. So today we have some advice from Tonya Galati. Tonya has loads of useful knowledge, having been a head of careers at Kingston University, and also she's been working within graduate recruitment in a number of other roles too. She's currently a consultant in this industry and is also the host of a new podcast called The Student Sessions, which is all about employability, and we've got a link to that podcast at the end, which we will share with you. So hopefully you've seen the agenda for this morning, having signed up for today's session. So you can see there we're covering where to find jobs, networking, a narrow focus versus a scattergun approach, some stuff on social media, and quite important right now, remaining resilient in what is a bit of an uncertain jobs market. So focusing on the job search, starting your career search is exciting, but can also be daunting if you don't know where to start. Before you spend time submitting an application form or sending out a CV, it's important to do some research to think about the kind of organisation that you want to work for and who to apply to. So an organisation's website is the first place to start your research. Here you'll often find information on key markets, clients, products and services, as well as financial or strategic reports and mission statements. You may be able to see customer feedback, understand more about the organisation's values, and determine whether you feel the culture fits with your own values and aims. We did cover values and culture quite a bit in last week's session, so if you missed that out, definitely go back and take a look at that on YouTube. Take note of key information such as the aims of the company, so maybe their annual turnover, if that's relevant to that industry, number of employees, organisational structure, any key competitors and their position in the industry. Knowing this will help you show the employer why you're the best fit. It shows them that you're knowledgeable and generally interested in who the company is and what they do. You then need to research the job. So most organisations will send you a job description or a person specification as part of the application process. And if they haven't, then it's likely that you'd find that information on their careers page of their website. But it is useful to research a little further. So you could consider, how does the role that you want to apply to fit with other roles within the organisation? Who are the key stakeholders that you'll be working with? What line management or reporting responsibilities will the role involve? What level of autonomy or supervision will you have? And what opportunities are there to train and develop your skills further? And then speak their language. So each organisation, you will notice this particularly when you start to work for one, has its own distinct language, values and core competencies. And these things underpin the culture. When researching, note any words that stand out, so pay attention to those that relate to skills, qualities or behaviours. That way you can use similar language in your application or during an interview. So a few top tips there. So clearly analyse the sector or industry, use your career service to help with that. Check out their social media profiles. So for most organisations and companies, they will have their branded social media profiles. But what most of them do as well is actually have careers team versions of social media profiles as well. And these are usually pretty well maintained. They post regularly, but they also respond to any interaction that they get. And I think that these are quite often underutilized. So definitely follow them, because you'll get to hear about any events that they're doing at the moment, probably online ones right now. But if you ask them questions or interact with them, then you're likely to get a good response. And we will talk about that in a bit more detail later on. Also take advantage of meeting employers at events. So these will be virtual for the time being, but they are still happening. Visit working environments if possible. So a great way to get a feel for an organisation directly. And speak to family or friends, people who've been there and done that. They can provide a useful perspective. So we're going to take a bit of a look at careers fairs now. Careers fairs are great places to speak face-to-face or virtually with recruiters and hiring managers and learn about current vacancies or potential opportunities. They're also fantastic places to network and develop your connections, which will help you take your career that one step further. You may get to meet some current graduates, and this is a brilliant opportunity to ask them honest questions about their experiences with the employer. You also might have the chance to impress a recruiter who can fast track you through the process, or at least help you enhance your application. If you progress through the application, it's likely that you'll meet these people again, so be memorable for the right reasons. And here are a few pointers to help you get the most from the careers fair experience. So first of all, be clear on why you're attending. So careers fairs have lots of benefits whether you're looking for a job or not, but it is important to be clear on why you're attending, or at the very least which employers you'd like to speak to. Otherwise you're likely to waste your time. Maybe you want to find out more about an organisation or learn what job opportunities might be available. Maybe you want some advice on applications or writing your CV and what the best approach is to them. But whatever it is, know that your purpose and leave the session feeling like you've achieved it. Carry out your research, so never underestimate the power of preparation and research. Careers fair websites will have lots of detailed information about the event, so the attendees, any guest speakers or workshops, and it's a good place to start to find out which organisations are actually attending. You may want to explore the current or potential job vacancies, or do more research into the organisation's culture and what makes them an attractive employer. Doing this will help you think of questions that you might wish to ask. Prepare your elevator pitch. So think about who are you, what makes you interesting, why would an employer want to employ you, and be prepared to have conversations with these employers. So be curious and show interest in what they're offering. Dress appropriately. Making a good first impression and looking professional should always be a key priority at careers fairs. Think of careers fairs as somewhere between a job interview and a work event. It is an opportunity to sell yourself to potential employers. So why would they take you seriously if you're dressed in jogging bottoms and trainers? Or even now, if it was a virtual event in your pajamas, you know, if they can see you, you want to create a strong first impression. And you can't go wrong with going sort of smart, casual, or business-like. Looking smart and professional can help you stand out from the crowd. And remember that the people that you're speaking to could have a real influence in the recruitment process and have good relationships with the hiring managers if they aren't the hiring managers themselves. Networking is an extremely powerful tool. So knowing more people gives you greater access, facilitates this sharing of information, and makes it easier to influence others. It's far easier to influence people that you know than it is to influence strangers. So reach out to them, start building those relationships, chat to them and ask them questions. And then finally, follow up on those conversations. Be sure to do that within a couple of days of meeting them. You might consider emailing people directly to thank them for their time, if you've got their contact details, or connect with them via LinkedIn. Be the one to stand out and leave a lasting impression. And I've got some examples that you might want to adapt coming up over the next couple of slides. So you can see here an example of an invitation to, well, either to connect with them. You could adapt this to connect with them on LinkedIn or as an email. And as I've said a few times, you will get access to these slides, so you can come back and have a look at these in a bit more detail and adapt them to suit you. So here's another one that you could also use. So here is a case study of a girl called Lizzie that I met quite a few years back now. It was when I was responsible for graduate recruitment at John Lewis, and I met Lizzie at a careers fair in Manchester. She was unbelievably keen, and she had prepared a load of questions that she wanted to ask me. She knew that I was going to be at the event, and she'd written a load of questions down in her notepad. She was very smart and well prepared, and she came across as ridiculously enthusiastic. I spent quite a bit of time chatting to her at the stand and answering her questions, and then I also spotted her in the front row of a talk that I gave at the same event. She asked for my business card and she used this to follow up very professionally a few days later. She really, really did impress me at this stage. Great first impression. So we're going to hear now from our expert today, Tonya, who's going to share some of her experience about careers fairs.
I think over the years, there's so many students that have stood out at a careers fair, both for the wrong reasons and the right reasons. I think one of the graduates that stood out particularly well was one girl who turned up. She'd clearly done her research. She knew all about the company. She knew what roles we were applying for, and she also knew what roles she was interested in. So actually, she used the time with us to talk more about the details in terms of what types of candidates we were looking for, what skills we were looking for, how she could make her application stand out. So, you know, really, really on it, which demonstrated she'd done her research. She wasn't just there for the freebies, and she made a really good impression. And she also left her CV with us. So, you know, really, really, really impressive.
Thank you, Tonya. And we'll hear from Tonya with a bit more advice shortly. As I've mentioned before, networking is a powerful tool, and there are many different ways to get in front of employers that you want to meet. So a careers fair is an ideal opportunity, as the employers are there specifically to speak to students, but you can also make use of the events being run by your careers service. So employers often do come onto campus to run company presentations or skills sessions. And currently there's a virtual approach, and I know career services are engaging with employers and putting on virtual events, so do check out what they're offering. These are excellent opportunities to learn more about the company and are likely to provide time for you to meet one-to-one with the recruiter. Your lecturers might have contacts at some of the organisations which interest you, so talk to them as well if possible. You might also have friends or family who can make an introduction. Be creative in finding ways to meet employers that interest you. In terms of best practice when contacting employers, it's worth noting that employers do tend to have very small graduate recruitment teams, much smaller than you might expect. And with so many universities in the UK, it's not possible for them to have a presence on every campus. On average, employers visit 20 universities according to the Institute of Student Employers and also the Times Top 100 Graduate Employers research. And it used to be that employers would use the league tables to select the universities that they engaged with and would mostly visit those that they perceived as the best. And often senior leaders in a business would influence this university choice, and recruitment teams would be encouraged to go to universities that the CEO or their leadership team had been students at. I'm pleased to say that this thinking has moved on a lot in recent years, and employers are encouraged to visit a much wider range of universities, driven in particular by the diversity agenda and the push to improve social mobility within their hires. If your preferred employers are present on your campus, make the most of opportunities to meet and engage with them. Always ask sensible and good questions, and don't miss that chance to start building relationship. But don't let the fact that they're at your campus or engaging with the campus make you complacent, because it's unlikely to give you a huge advantage in terms of being fast-tracked through the process, although this can happen, and you'll still be competing with candidates from all universities. I also recommend exploring how you can connect with SMEs. There's been a huge growth in this sector, and as they tend to have exceptionally small recruitment teams, if they have them at all, they don't always have the resources to connect with universities or promote themselves as much as the larger corporates. Have a chat with your career service to see what they advise. Perhaps the career service runs an event specifically for SME employers, which could be well worth attending. Consider your preferred location, as your university will clearly be focused on local SMEs, so you might need to look in a different city. It could be that your careers service are able to put you in touch with their equivalent team in your desired location. If an employer that you want to meet isn't engaging with your university, try contacting them directly. Your university career service might even have a contact within that organisation. A few things that you might want to do before you get in touch with an employer, though, is to know exactly what's on your CV. So you should know the content of your CV off by heart, and we are covering CVs in a lot more detail next week. During initial conversations, it's likely that you'd be asked to share your skills and experiences, so it's important that what you say does match what's on your CV. They might well ask you questions about specific parts that are on there, so know your stuff inside out so that you're not hesitant on a particular area. If you said you took a gap year to go travelling, be really clear about where you went and be prepared to share some interesting facts about what you did. If you supported your student union as a rep, know what you achieved and how you supported your fellow students. Or if you secured an internship as part of your degree, know what you learned and how this has cemented your future career plans. And remember, always tailor your CV to each employer. Be ready for that contact with them. So before sending off that CV or contacting the employer, make sure you're ready to be contacted. So think about the email address that you use. If you're using a university email address, how long are you going to have access to that email address? And it might be time to create a personal, professional email address if you haven't done this already. If your email address is still something like I go partying every night at hotmail.com, definitely change it to something more suitable and professional. I have a friend who is in her late 30s who still has a very unprofessional email address, which is something like Ibiza party princess at bt.com or whatever. And that always makes me chuckle, and I hope she doesn't use that for her job hunting. So just think about that. And the same thing applies to your voicemail. So you don't want a potential employer to be greeted with an inappropriate or funny message. And if you receive a call from an unknown number when you're starting to job hunt, answer in a clear and professional manner. Don't answer thinking that you're speaking to an annoying cold caller, because it could be an employer. And finally, follow the rules. So whether you're making contact on spec or responding to a message from a potential employer, there are some rules to follow. Be sure to read through the recruitment pages of the organisation's website. Often these will have the answers to a number of initial questions that you may have. And knowing these answers will show that you've done your research. Recruiters and employers get asked a lot of questions, so make sure that your questions are thought through, relevant and likely to engage their interest. If you're asked to complete an online application, don't just send through your CV. If they ask for a cover letter, be sure to include one. Not following simple instructions can mean instant rejection, so carefully read any instructions and always remain professional. So, where to find jobs? Hang on, let me just, where to find jobs. So you can see on here that I've listed a lot of job search websites. So some of these you might have already come across, and some of these might be new to you. So what I would suggest is that if you haven't already, spend some time going through each of these websites to see whether they have any vacancies that are of interest to you and have jobs in your particular sector. So these ones are all known for having graduate level placements and or graduate jobs. They're in no particular order, and when you get the recording of this webinar, this is definitely the page to come back to. Check out these sites, sign up for relevant alerts. They often have different areas within the websites that offer advice in particular sectors, so can be a really useful tool to come back to. So moving on to then how to job search effectively once you've got the roles and the alerts coming through. So knowing where to start can feel daunting sometimes, so start the search sooner rather than later and stay motivated. The recruitment process, if you haven't already experienced it, can be long and involve many steps, so it's best to start as early as you can. Schedule time to do that research. So identify when you're at your most productive and allocate this time to job searching and submitting your applications. Research suggests that the first 2 hours after waking are when people are most proactive. So set your alarm and get searching when you're feeling motivated. If you're more of a night owl, take some time each evening to focus on your search. Technology gives us access to the internet all the time, so use your downtime effectively and make use of the many job search apps. Invest in the roles that match your skill set, so save yourself time by applying for the right positions, ones that are a match for your skills, experiences and values. And we covered that last week in quite a bit of detail. This will increase your chances of making it through the first part of the application process. it's vital to ask yourself if you're genuinely interested in the position that you're applying for, because employers can always spot those applications where applicants haven't spent much time on them, and they can tell when they haven't bothered to make sure that their skills and experience match what's required. So prioritise quality over quantity, and submitting fewer well-presented, well-considered applications instead of multiple slapdash ones, that's going to help you to secure the job of your dreams far quicker. Keep track of what you're applying for, so use your phone or a notebook to keep a record of the applications and or CVs that you've submitted. This way you'll know exactly what you've applied for and who you have or haven't heard back from. Some useful things that you might want to keep track of could be the organisation who has the position, the contact's name and telephone number if you have those, the position itself that you're applying to, if there's a reference number, perhaps the salary details and the closing date. I actually have a job search planner that I'm going to send you along with the recording of this webinar, and that can be used to help you keep organised. So we're going to have a look at how recruitment agencies might add value to your job search. So recruitment agencies exist to help employers source the best possible candidates for their available positions. Using a recruitment agency in your search can be beneficial if you approach it in the right way. So what do recruitment agencies actually do? Well, they match candidates to job vacancies, and they work directly with organisations to help fill their roles. Recruitment agency consultants, they will source the opportunities directly with employers, generate CVs and prepare candidates for interviews, and they can streamline the whole job seeking process. To find the right agency, ask yourself these questions to help narrow down your search and target the right agency. So what types of employers work with the agency? Are they the ones that you'd like to work for? Does the agency recruit for the types of positions that you're searching for? Does the agency want to meet you in person or online as it is now? Or do they just want you to send your CV over? If you meet with them, that's going to allow you to create the best first impression with them. Consider what the agency's reputation is. So what are other candidates saying about their experiences with them? And think about the background checks that the agency might need to perform on you. So getting the relationship right by figuring out which agency will fit your needs, that's often the best place to start. But once you've identified this, it's important to think about how you're going to work together. So make contact to arrange to speak to them or meet them in person when possible, so you can build rapport and engage in a personable way. Give them an up-to-date CV, making sure that it shows off your skills and capabilities, and show an interest in the work that the agency does. Ask how your CV compares to those of other candidates. Be really useful to get that feedback, and agree how often you'll communicate with them once you've set that relationship up. Here are a few recruitment agencies that are known in the graduate space. So again, another slide to come back to and spend a bit of time looking at each of these and seeing if they offer any roles that are in your particular sector. So which is better, casting your net wide or narrowing your focus? You've probably already picked up that I recommend thinking bigger picture and trying to narrow that search down a bit. So gathering your information, keep an open mind and be curious about what's available to you, and then start narrowing that search. I've got a case study here of a lady called Louise, who I met back in my John Lewis days again. So I saw her face to face at assessment centre stage, and I carried out her final interview. One of the questions I used to ask at this stage was who else they'd applied to. And it wasn't scored, clearly it wasn't scored, but it was just really for my own information to find out who students saw as our competitors. And I asked Louise this question, and she told me that she hadn't applied to anyone else, which I was very surprised at, and I don't think I've ever heard that before or since. She was so committed to that role that she put everything into her application. She told me she'd spent 20 hours on her application form, and you could tell because it was an exceptional application. She knew that she would be one of the strongest candidates that I saw at this final interview stage. And she was right. She was outstanding. She had excellent scores across every part of the assessment process. And we offered her a job. She was the first of her cohort to be promoted, so her confidence and prediction was accurate. So great confidence there. But I've met candidates who have admitted that they have just picked up the Times Top 100 book and they've applied to everyone that they've heard of on that list. So different approaches there. And actually, I wouldn't suggest only applying for one thing, but I think whatever you apply for and however many that may be, you have to be able to show that you're genuinely interested in that company and in that position. Very important that you're interested in the job and the company, and it's very hard to do that if you're applying for loads and loads. So definitely narrow that search. But let's see what Tonya thinks.
Avoid a scattergun approach when it comes to applications, and really make sure that you tailor the applications that you're submitting. I think if a candidate is applying for lots of roles that are the same, then that's fine, but don't apply for anything and everything. I think time is better spent making sure that you write a really quality application.
Okay, wise words there from Tonya, backing up what we're saying. Okay, over to Helen now.
Oh yeah, just trying to keep up with the questions there. So just talking through the early stages of the recruitment process. So the early stages can be the hardest to pass. At this point, there are often thousands of candidates and only a manageable number can move through each stage. The rise in application numbers has led to employers using technology more frequently to help sift through these candidates at different stages. So it's often the case that you won't actually meet the employer until the final stage of the assessment process. So it can be a challenge to stand out. First things first, before you invest hours or days in a recruitment process, figure out if you're actually eligible to apply. So employers use something called killer questions at the start of the process to cover some or all of the following, things like minimum degree requirement, UCAS points, work experience, right to work in the UK, or even location flexibility. Now, if you don't meet these minimum criteria, the applicant tracking system will probably automatically reject you. Now, there can be exceptions, but you'll need to contact the employer directly before proceeding online if you've been rejected. So, for example, there might be some extenuating circumstances as to why you have lower UCAS points or a lower degree. What to expect from the assessment process? So the overwhelming majority of graduate employers characterise their recruitment approach as competency-based, but there are also substantial numbers that favour strength-based, values-based, or even technical approaches to recruitment. Most will use more than one approach, so you need to be ready to answer a range of questions and get involved in different selection activities. So looking at the chart on the screen, you can make some basic assumptions. It's likely that the assessment process will start with you submitting an application form, CV, cover letter. Then you'll need to complete a test, maybe 2 or 3, and then you'll be interviewed via phone or video before attending an assessment centre and probably having to do a one-to-one interview, either online or face-to-face. It's really important to remember before getting stuck into this application process, make sure you've done your research. And certainly at the moment, you've got the time to do this research and try and get ahead of the game. With regards to what the labour market's like at the moment, I'm sure a lot of you have been following the news and keeping abreast of what's happening. And it's quite easy to become a bit demoralised by it all. But the fact is, employers are still recruiting, certainly the larger ones especially. So I've had a few conversations with employers recently who are doing their utmost to keep on track with their graduate recruitment. And I've been really impressed with how quickly they've turned their process around and put it online to make it available for people. So it's still really important to research and apply for jobs. What you may have to do is be a bit more flexible and a bit more open-minded about your career. So you might have had your heart set on a particular dream job or even a particular industry, but you need to cast your net a bit wider and potentially look at graduate roles outside of what you would have thought of, and possibly even non-graduate roles to make the best use of the time that you've got available. We know it's challenging out there at the moment, but use this time to help make yourself stand out, to do that research and to put yourself in the best possible position going forward. Thanks, Sophie.
Great, thanks, Helen. I'm going to move on and look at LinkedIn in a little bit of detail now. Now, I appreciate that there will be such a variety of experience and knowledge of LinkedIn. Some of you won't have used it, but hopefully have heard of it, whereas some of you might be using it on a regular basis. So again, this is going to be something for some people to come back to. But LinkedIn is a professional networking site that does create opportunities to build networks, promote your professional experience and develop links to professional communities, and it can definitely help you to find a job. It can be hard to stand out in the current job market, but a LinkedIn profile will raise your personal profile and help you build that network. So with a good profile, you can create a professional brand that people can see. Perfect opportunity to share those skills, qualities and knowledge with a huge audience. It can increase awareness, your awareness, so keeping you up to date with relevant information and news about your areas of interest and the employers that interest you. It helps generate ideas so you can take part in discussions, so you can grow your knowledge and explore new and exciting opportunities. Joining discussion groups on LinkedIn allows you to meet like-minded people and also to share experiences. Gaining recommendations and endorsements is a great feature, so you can ask people to recommend you. If you've got previous or current employers, great. If not, ask for endorsements from your lecturers. People with recommendations have a greater chance of being noticed by potential employers. You can research your favourite organisations, so talk to the people that work in them and learn more about the industry and wider network. You can activate email alerts to receive notifications about jobs that match your skill set. And lots of recruiters do use LinkedIn to search for new talent. So if your profile is professional and detailed, it's likely to attract more attention. You might even get headhunted. I've actually created a step-by-step guide to help you make the most of your profile. So whether you're new to LinkedIn or wanting to freshen up an existing profile, this will be useful. And we will send this out with the recording to this webinar. We'll also be sending out a short LinkedIn task that you can try after the webinar. For those of you who are new to LinkedIn or don't use it that much, this task will be super useful. If you're already using LinkedIn, can you take it to the next level? Have you got what is considered an all-star profile? You can see this on your own profile once you're logged into LinkedIn. My profile is an all-star profile, so take a look at it and you'll notice that I've completed every section in quite a bit of detail, and that is what contributes to making it all-star. I also post regularly and interact with other posts. Feel free to practice your invitation to connect by sending me a request. Few social media do's and don'ts there. I'm just going to whiz through these so that we can get onto the final topic before sharing the resources with you. So a few do's and don'ts to consider on social media, and this is social media in general. So do's: search for yourself on the internet, so you'd be amazed what kind of information is out there. Make sure there's nothing on the first or second page of the search pages that show you in a bad light, so try to get those removed. Also check for images that might appear from old sites that you no longer use. Cleanse those social media profiles, so get rid of any content that is set to public that doesn't show you in the best light so that employers don't see it. I'm not saying to delete all your precious memories, but just remove those that are less forgiving or change your privacy settings. So definitely check your privacy settings. So if the stuff that you're posting isn't suitable for public viewing, just make sure they're private. You'd be amazed how many employers have told me that they've checked out social media profiles, usually at the point of interview. I personally don't think that that's particularly ethical, but if it happens, and we need to be aware of that. So just make sure your settings are appropriate and that your profile pictures are appropriate on even your personal profiles, because they can still be seen. So be careful what you post, keep it professional if it's in a public domain. And some don'ts: don't hide. So employers will want to see that you've got a social media presence in particular industries, especially, so, you know, marketing, fashion, those sorts of things. Don't post anything you wouldn't want your grandparents to see, so keep it clean especially where it's public. And don't connect to everybody, so think twice about accepting requests from friends on your LinkedIn account, so connections should always be relevant to your industry. And don't overshare, don't post anything that you might regret later that could damage your chances of securing the job of your dreams. So we've got a quote here about resilience. So we're going to end on remaining resilient in this uncertain jobs market. So hopefully Helen's given you a bit of confidence about the fact that some employers are still recruiting and that the market will be bouncing back. But we just want to spend a little bit of time just going over some things that you can do to build resilience in what is a stressful time. So we know that it is a challenging time. Only a couple of months ago, the economy was doing so well, and then the majority of the world's thrown this curveball of craziness and uncertainty. So it is a tough time right now, but things will bounce back, as we've seen when there's been recessions in the past. And I'm old enough to have been through a recession in my working lifetime, and things will improve. The graduate market, luckily, is one of the first markets to bounce back, because employers know that the labour is good value, and they're also mindful that if they don't bring graduates in, they will have talent gaps in future years. Many students and graduates will think that there is no point in even applying, and that is just not the case. And I think the fact that you've signed up to these webinars shows that you're taking finding a job seriously, so you are at an advantage with the right mindset straight away. There's a few tips that you can consider, so know what's in your control and what isn't. None of us can control what is happening around us right now, and you might be feeling angry or upset, which is very normal, and I've certainly had those moments myself. You have to try and get to a point where you realise that the energy used on feeling this way can be spent elsewhere. So if you're feeling upset that there may be less jobs to apply for, okay, well, that's out of your control. But what is in your control is finding out who is hiring, signing up for job alerts, online networking, and actually applying for the jobs. We had a great story last week after one of our webinars on finding your strengths, of a student that dropped us a note to say that they'd been inspired by the session, and they'd spent the afternoon searching for work experience opportunities and found things that they were interested in that were open, and we thought that was brilliant. That was great to hear. Adopt a growth mindset. So there's lots of reading out there on growth mindsets. The view is that by adopting a growth mindset instead of a fixed one, you will embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, and find lessons and inspiration from others. It's worth reading up on this subject if you have time, as it's interesting stuff and it's useful. If you joined the webinar last week, you've hopefully spent some time considering what your strengths are. So develop your resilience by spending time doing things that you enjoy and are good at. This will be pleasurable and create positive feelings and confidence. Prioritize your well-being, which is super important right now. If you get sick, whether that's physically or mentally, you will find it harder to be focused on securing a job. Consider practicing mindfulness or find an activity which relaxes you to support your mental health. Speak to family and friends about any worries or concerns, or simply just to stay connected. Eat well and make time to do some exercise each day so that your physical health is a priority. Take time out to reflect. Reflection is important, particularly in times of change. If you're practical, it might be that you wish to use reflection to consider what you need to do to be job ready, so perhaps updating your CV or your LinkedIn profile. You might review where you are on your job search journey and work out which parts of the recruitment process you need to improve to increase your chances of job success. Reflection for you might be more linked to your mental health and a chance to check in with your feelings, but do what works for you. And above all, remain positive. We all get a few knockbacks when looking for work. Try not to take it personally if you're rejected or you don't get a response from an employer. Your application simply might not match the criteria they're looking for, but it's not a reflection of you as a person. Use these knockbacks as an opportunity to ask for feedback and to develop your future applications. So we're going to cover the questions that have been asked at the very end of this webinar, so feel free to log off at that point if you don't want to hear the summary. I just want to share with you what's happening next time, and also direct you to the resources that will be useful for you. So next week we're running sessions all next week on creating a killer CV and acing application forms, so you can see a little overview there as to what we'll be covering. And here are some of the resources that we've mentioned. So I will send out the job search planner, the LinkedIn task, and the LinkedIn profile setup guide. Please use your career service. They will always be helpful and useful. There's a link there to the book, and also a link to our YouTube channel if you want to see what we covered last week. If you sign up as a subscriber, you'll get the alerts each time we release a new video as well. And there's a link to Tonya's Student Sessions podcast that we mentioned before. So before Helen does the summary of questions, here are our social media platforms. We'd love to connect with you. We've had some great comments and feedback from students, so we would love to hear your thoughts and views. Please do connect with us. and you will receive a link to a survey about the webinars. We'd love you to complete that. It takes less than 2 minutes, and your feedback is really, really valuable and helps us to improve future webinars and gives us some ideas. So thank you very much for those of you that have completed that so far, and for all the comments that we've had. So before we sign off, Helen, do you want to give a bit of a summary on the questions?
Yeah, just a few points. So just to confirm, we will be sending out the webinar slides and the recording of this webinar to all of you before the end of the week, or at the very latest beginning of next week. So just to confirm, that is coming across. A few of you have had some questions around what agencies you should be looking at, what particularly advertising placements, what agencies or search engines are good for international students, for example. I'm sorry I've not been able to give you a specific example for this area, but I really can't stress enough, talk to your careers service, because they're particularly going to have connections with local employers and local agencies that they can refer you to. Your career service will be very heavily invested into your particular cohort and the demographics of your area, and they're the best people to advise you of who to approach in terms of agencies and those kind of organisations. I had a question around applying for jobs. Should you apply if you don't meet all of the desirable criteria? Definitely. So most most job descriptions will ask you to hit essential criteria and desirable criteria. It's very rare that someone can actually say that they meet both and all of those things. You want to have a good look at the essential criteria. There might be some in there that are deal breakers if you haven't got it. And you can tell this sometimes from application questions. So if they ask for particular experience with a certain system, and there's a question on the application form as well that says, tell me about a time when you've used this system, it's likely that if you haven't used that system, you're not going to be able to progress your application. But even then, it might be worth having a chat with the employer to say, I've got 4 out of 5 of the essential criteria you're looking for, but there's just this one area, but I could certainly learn it, and this is how I would go about doing it. For desirable criteria, absolutely, definitely apply for the job if you don't hit all of it, because that word desirable is, in an ideal world, yes, they want you to have it, but they're fully aware that you might not have all of that. And again, it's about showing in the application process how you develop those areas and how you'd learn about those things. I myself, applying for my last job, I didn't hit all of the desirable criteria, and it was about showing how I could learn that and how I could use that going forward. Lastly, just a point around work experience and getting voluntary work experience at the moment. There's lots of opportunities during the pandemic to get voluntary work experience, and I know that it's in industries like supermarkets and healthcare, which are things that some of you might not traditionally have looked at. But employers going forward are probably going to have some questions in their application process around what did you do during the pandemic? They might try and test you around your resilience and your emotional intelligence, see how you use this time. So what to you might not seem as relevant work experience working in a supermarket or on the front lines is going to look very good to an employer in terms of how you've used that time and what you've done to help give yourself the edge going forward. Okay. But if any of you do want to link in with us afterwards and ask us any further questions, please do.
Great. Thank you. So we'll end that, and we hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you very much.